one is kind of a bizarre one. Wow, let me just throw everything. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with the books that I wish I'd read this year. So today, just basically like the title says, is very self-explanatory. We're going to be going over some books that I wish that I had read in 2020, so made some time for. These should have been done, and they were not. I've got a handful of books here to talk about, so let's just get into it. I feel like this doesn't need a lot of introduction, so let's get started. The very first book was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I just never got around to it, and that is My Calamity Jane by the Lady Janies, who are Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is the final and their kind of Lady Janies series of companion novels. They are doing a Lady Marie series coming out next year, or starting next year, so I'm very excited about this. But I love the way they write. They basically take these real life people or situations and make them funny. And this was the last in their series, and this one was all about the Wild West. And while the Wild West is not my favorite thing to read about, I love them so much that it's okay. But it would have been great to get to it this year because, like I said, their Lady Marie series is coming out, and I would have liked to finish this one before I got to that one. But it happens. The next one is kind of a bizarre one because I have not talked about it, but it's kind of been in like the back of my brain, and that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is a standalone fantasy story that I feel like either you loved or you hated. There's like no in between here. I've heard great things about this author, and the things that I've heard that are not so great are things that I like. This basically follows our main character, Elizabeth, and she works in a library of sorts where there's a bunch of grimoires, and when provoked, these grimoires can turn into monsters. And so she has to keep all the grimoires down, calmed, taken care of so they don't turn into these monsters. And something happens in this library that like a grimoire like escapes or something, and so she is basically implicated in this disaster and teams up with a sorcerer, and in this world sorcery is not a good thing, and that's basically all I know. I'm sure there's like a grand adventure to prove that she was innocent and not involved in this or something like that, but this just sounds like something that I would enjoy, and I just keep forgetting about it, and I just need to actually read it, because her other book that she has written, The Enchantment of Ravens or something like that, also sounds very interesting, but I want to see if I actually like her writing before I invest in both of those books. But this just sounds great, and how often do you actually read a fantasy that's a standalone? So this sounds like it's going to be awesome, and I just wish I had gotten around to it. The next three books I'm going to do together, because they are all part of the same series, and that is the Reluctant Royal series by Alyssa Cole. We've got a Princess in Theory, a Duke by Default, and a Prince on Paper, and these are all just kind of like romance books that have to do with princes and princesses in some form. I freaking love prince and princess stories. I love romance books, and these apparently are amazing. Also, the covers, I don't know if you can see the beauty that are these human beings on this cover. It's great, and I wish I'd gotten around to this, but I didn't. I plan to read many more of these, small paperback romances that I've got hanging out here. So this is a series I wish I'd gotten around to. I just didn't have time for it, but I'm hyping myself up, so hopefully next year. The next one is one that I definitely mentioned in my like mid-year freakout tag as like one I wanted to read by the end of the year, and did not do that, and that's To Have and to Hoax by Martha Waters. I think this sounds amazing, and I just ran out of time. But it basically is kind of like a historical fiction romance between this married couple who've been together for about 5 years, but after 1 year of marriage, something happened, and they basically had a big fight and haven't been on speaking terms since. And this sounds like it's going to be a prank-ish war rom-com set in like Regency England. And that sounds amazing. This just sounds like chaotic goodness, to be honest, and I'm very excited about it. And I don't read a lot of romance books where the couple has already been together and they're trying to fix it or get back together, kind of like second chance romance. I read a lot of they get together for the first time situation. So I'm excited to see kind of what this one is like. I apologize. The sun decided to come out for some reason, so we're going to be shiny today. But this just sounds amazing, and I just didn't get around to it. I read a lot of romance during the summer, and I just didn't get around to it this year, so hopefully next year this will happen, but sadness. I'm sad about that one. The next one I want to talk about is a classic that I didn't get around to, and that is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This one is one that, like, I loved the story of Anne with an E that's on Netflix, and I think it's amazing, and I need to get into this story. However, Mary-Kate Wiles, who some of you might know, she's an actress. She's done a lot of YouTube things. She was Lydia Bennet in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. She's part of Shipwrecked, which is a production company on YouTube. She's amazing. I think she's very, very talented. But she has a podcast going with some of her friends where they are basically reading this entire book, and they're coming out in sections. So I was waiting for them to all come out before I kind of like used that as an audiobooks kind of to read along to. But they're just not all out yet, so that's why this one didn't get read, but hopefully next year I can get around to this one. I really want to read this. I want to see if I like it because I'd love to own the entire series because there's definitely more in the Anne of Green Gables series, but I need to get around to this one just to make sure it's my thing. But I do actually have a reason for not doing that. But I should have done that at some point this year. I should have at least started it. Let's just say that. The next one is also a series, and that is the Queen of the Tearling series by Erica Johansson, which is Queen of the Tearling, The Invasion of the Tearling, and The Fate of the Tearling. And this is a fantasy series where it's kind of like fairy tale-esque, but the main character's name is Kelsey, and she's a princess, and it just makes me very happy. But basically, like, she is 19, and she's now officially the queen, but she's surrounded by enemies, and it just seems like this big fantasy adventure that all has to do with a specific jewel. Not entirely sure. I was hoping to get to the series because I know that Ashley from Falling Through Fiction was thinking about doing a read-along of this series, but that never happened this year. I think she just got really busy, which is completely understandable. I'm wanting to wait until she does do that read-along because I think it'll be fun to read these with other people. But I was hoping to get to this one this year, and I just never got around to it because life got in the way for many people involved. But it would be so cool to finally get around to this series because then I can pretend that I am a princess, and wouldn't that just be so cool? The next one is one that came out this year, and that is The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dawn. This is a sci-fi retelling of Jane Austen's Persuasion. Now, I read another book by Alexa Dawn, which is Brightly Burning, and that is a kind of sci-fi retelling of Jane Eyre. I read that earlier this year and enjoyed it, so I'm very excited to get into this book at some point, but I loved that one so much that I was hoping to get into this one because Persuasion just makes me so happy, and I think it's set kind of in the same general world, it's just a different story. And I'm really intrigued to see kind of her take on the Persuasion story because I haven't seen a lot of Persuasion retellings, to be honest, especially not one that is sci-fi. So I was hoping to get to this one after I finished her other book. It just didn't happen. The next one is a series I wish I had started, and I just never did, and that is Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is part of the Aurora cycle. This is a sci-fi series about a bunch of, like, people that are part of a troupe, and they're misfits, and they don't quite go together. I'm not sure, to be honest, but I loved Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff other series, the Illuminae Files, and this is not told in mixed media, this is told just like a normal book, but the two of them together are so creative that I think that this book's going to be amazing, and the series is just going to be amazing. I just didn't get around to starting it, and I really wish I could have, because, like, obviously I don't want to get the sequel until I finish the first one. Will that still hold true next year? We'll see. But yeah, this is just kind of like a found family trope set in a 2380, and they're just a bunch of people that had to get together, and it has to do with this girl named Aurora who has been in, like, cryo-frozen or something. I don't really remember. I just think it's going to be awesome, and I trust these two authors a lot, especially together. So that's one I wish I'd gotten around to as well. And the very last one that I wish I had gotten around to is Jane Steele by Lindsay Fay. This is a retelling of Jane Eyre, but as if Jane is a serial killer, kind of. But this seems very like gothic, which is basically what Jane Eyre is about. It's a perfect like Halloween fall read, and I was really hoping to get around to this one during fall this year. It just didn't happen, so hopefully next year around fall, that could be something that I pick up. But this just sounds so cool because I love retellings of Jane Eyre, because I love the story of Jane Eyre, but the actual original text is very boring for me. I think the writing just doesn't work for me, so I love it when they do kind of retellings. And this is set in the same time period that Jane Eyre is originally written in. It just has a murdery subplot to it. I don't know, it just sounds great, and I really wish I'd gotten around to it this fall. So that's it. Those are all of the books that I wish I'd gotten around to in 2020, and I just didn't. Maybe some of these will reappear in 2021. I'll make some extra effort to read some of these next year. You'll just have to wait and find out. I'll have to wait and find out. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please let me know down below if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, or if there's a few books that you wish that you had gotten around to in 2020 and you just ran out of time. But that is really all I have for you guys today, so I hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there if you want to follow along on any of those, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!